What is up guys, and welcome back to the channel. In today's video I wanted to talk about chopping and making more interesting patterns with your chops. Now if you're someone that's just starting out chopping or someone that's finding themselves making the same kind of patterns all the time, then hopefully this video can give you a little bit of inspiration. I'm very guilty of just doing chops on the bar all the time, and I think that can add to some really boring sounding beats. So hopefully this is also going to be useful for myself as well. I just want to kind of try and experiment a little bit, add some more bounce, add some more character into those chop patterns, and let's see what we can do here today. So as an example, this is probably something that I would usually go for if I was creating a beat. So not the most inspiring thing, but I do find myself falling into the trap of doing that a lot, to be honest. So this is probably also going to be a useful exercise for me. Now, one thing that I will say is this will apply to most samplers, but you've got to have mute groups available. So if you're on the SX or the A, this is going to be a lot harder to follow along with. The mute groups really do change things up on this device. If you're going to follow along on the SX or the A, you're probably going to have to duplicate quite a lot of your pads in order to be able to get the same effect. On an MPC or another sampler like that, you should be able to follow along with the same sort of philosophies. It's just a case of applying it to whatever equipment you're using. So yeah, a lot of the time I'm kind of just bobbing along like this. So what can we do to make that more interesting? Well, I think the first thing is we need to get more rhythm in there, and the second thing is probably more bounce and energy. So how do we go about doing that? I think one of the easiest ways to start doing that is to start adding repeating pads for a start. So let's look at that firstly. So you could hear there, I was repeating pad 3, and I wasn't doing that in a flat way, I was adding a kind of swing to it. So if I was to do that in a flat way, it'd probably sound something more like this. But I'm trying to get that swing in there, I'm trying to get that rhythm in there and that energy, so you can hear what I do here. So that's one technique you can throw into your patterns to get more feeling and more of a vibe, as you could hear there. So I'll just do that one more time. This is the exercise that you can practice to get this effect. It's just with these two pads, 2 and 3. Now that could work for the first 3 bars of a 4-bar pattern, but you're going to have some sort of resolution to that pattern, I think. Kind of like a story. If you're just going to do that 4 times, it's going to get very, very repetitive. So what I mean by adding a resolution is changing it for the last bar of the 4. So it will sound something like this. This is just me jamming, so if it doesn't come out perfect, that's the reason why, but the resolution will sound something like this. That just gives that space to be able to come back around to the start again, and it kind of has that familiar vibe again when you start the pattern again. So it breaks it up a little bit, it makes it a little bit more interesting, and we've got those repetitions on pad 3 going as well. Now obviously they don't always have to be in that specific position either. We can really start to experiment with this. And another technique that we can use as well is to do even faster repetitions. So I'll move on to that now. Using pad 2 and 3 again for the sake of the exercise, I'll show you how you can go even quicker on pad 3 and get some even more interesting patterns going. So check this out. And let's say we wanted to add that again into that pattern that has the resolution. So there we go, we've added a really quick pattern on the 3 there. It's still got that swing in it, but it's got that real energy and feeling into it. So that's going to make things way more interesting. So another thing that we can try and do is change between pads faster. Now this is particularly useful if you're chopping really, really small parts of a sample, kind of like micro chopping. I've got a video on that which I'll try and remember to link to. You can take really small bits of tracks and make beats out of them. However, it means you don't get long for that pad to ring out, so you're going to have to change to another one very quickly. So you may have to do something like this, for example. So I always try and take quite long samples when I'm chopping to a pad, but if you are working with very, very small chops, then those kind of patterns can work particularly well as well. Sometimes you don't get the time that you want on a chop because it's so short and you have to immediately spring to another one, otherwise you're going to get dead space. So that's something to think about if you are chopping in that way. Sometimes you're having to chop in between drum or percussion hits, so you only get a really, really small bit to work with, and that will kind of dictate the pattern that you end up creating a little bit in a way, which is not necessarily a bad thing. It may just make you a little bit more creative with the pattern that you have to use. So again, that's definitely something to consider when you're putting your patterns together. That's kind of like a physical restraint, but how long have you got for that sample or chop to ring out before you have to change the pad as well? So you may have to get creative with that side of things. So you could hear there that 7 and 8 were working particularly well for that style. Those aren't necessarily short samples, but they just work well being played short in this pattern. 4 didn't work well. I think that was because it was kind of 2 notes which were slightly out of time. So let me just try that again. So already there you can hear we're getting way, way more interesting sounds going, and we can resample those down or we can put those in the pattern mode. If you're working on other devices that don't have resample, you can put these into your pattern mode. Pattern mode will allow you to get way more creative because sometimes with resampling you're having to drum at the same time as well, so you can't physically do those two things at the same time because it requires way too much coordination to be able to do it. It'd take years of practice. So just being able to play the pads on their own, that's the way you're going to get these patterns a lot more interesting as well. And yeah, sometimes it is just about sitting down and just practicing making more interesting rhythms with the chops. Completely forget about the drums and see what you can come up with. And I'm sure after a few sort of sessions of doing that, your rhythms and the sounds that you're getting with your sample chops are going to get way more interesting. So at the start of the video, we had a very, very simple pattern like this. And by the end of the video, we've ended up with something like this. So if you are struggling for some ideas for your sample chop patterns, I hope this helped you out, guys. If you've got any sort of philosophies or ideas to throw in to the conversation, then please leave a comment below. I'd love to hear those, and I'm sure that would be beneficial for the rest of the beatmaking community out there. Just before I leave as well, don't forget, if you want to support what I'm doing here with these tutorials, it would be great if you could visit my shop, spvids.com. There's links below to everything that you can support. I've also got t-shirts on Teespring as well. You can go ahead and check those out. All those things keep me uploading these videos and keep me doing what I'm doing here, guys. So that would be very much appreciated if you could go and have a look at those links. So thanks very much for watching. If you got this far, don't forget to subscribe if you're new around here. I have videos dropping pretty much every other day now. They're mainly related to the SP, but I do philosophical videos about beat making, I do vlogs, I do beats. There's all sorts of stuff going on this channel related to being a creative and making beats. So if you could hit subscribe, I'd very much appreciate it. Take it easy, guys. Keep making beats, and I will be back with more content very soon. Peace.